In today's story, a single mother's quiet life is shattered when her past walks through the wrong door. And what unfolds next will challenge everything she thought she knew about love, forgiveness, and family. Stay with us, because what happens in the next few minutes may just leave you breathless. What if the twins asleep in that bed were yours? That's the question that knocked the breath out of Richard Walker the moment he opened the wrong villa door at Lake Haven Resort. He wasn't supposed to be there. Dressed in a charcoal suit tailored to perfection, in Italian shoes that echoed authority with every step. Richard had flown into Vermont that morning for one reason: to finalize a multi-million-dollar acquisition with foreign investors. No distractions, no detours, but a clerical error at the front desk handed him the wrong villa key. A mix-up so simple, so random, yet so destined. He didn't realize it at first. He was too distracted by numbers and terms, too wound up from a tense negotiation where his signature was all that stood between empire and collapse. The boardroom was behind him. Now he just wanted a hot shower in silence. He opened the villa door. The scent hit him. First, vanilla and coconut, warm and oddly familiar. The lights were dim, the room softly glowing with the quiet ambience of home. But this wasn't home. This wasn't even his room. And then he saw her. She stood with her back to him in the center of the living room, wearing a simple cream-colored dress. Her long chestnut hair flowed down her back in soft waves. Two small figures lay curled on the king-sized bed behind her. Two blonde-haired, blue-eyed boys fast asleep, peaceful. Richard froze. She turned. Grace Miller, his past staring right at him, eyes wide, face pale, her mouth opened, but no sound came. His heart thudded like a war drum in his chest. The boys, they were unmistakable. They looked just like he did when he was their age. His legs moved without thought, his briefcase dropped to the floor, his voice caught in his throat. Grace's expression shifted from stunned to furious in an instant. 7 years of silence, of unanswered letters and shattered promises erupted in her eyes like a storm. "What are you doing here?" she whispered, voice trembling. Richard opened his mouth, but couldn't speak. All he could think was one thing over and over. "Are they mine?" The question sat between them like a blade. Grace stepped forward. Her voice dropped low. Her pain sharpened. "Get out." He didn't move. She said it again, this time louder. Her hand pointed toward the door, her other instinctively moving to protect her children. "I said, get out." He stepped back, reeling like he'd been punched in the chest. At the threshold, he turned and murmured, "Why didn't you tell me, Grace?" Her silence was deafening. He didn't wait for an answer. He just left, into the night, into the wind that roared through Lake Haven's trees like it knew everything that had just been unearthed. Grace didn't sleep that night, not because of Richard, but because of what he stirred inside her. She sat on the edge of the bed staring at her boys. Ethan and Liam. The only good thing that ever came from the worst heartbreak of her life. She remembered Zurich like it was yesterday. The business seminar. The midnight walks through cobblestone streets. The man with ambition in his eyes and tenderness in his voice. The man who said, "I never wanted to be a father, but with you it feels right." Then he left. Said it was just a few months in Asia. Said he'd be back, but he never came back. Grace waited. She called. She wrote, but he vanished. No goodbye, no explanation. And then the pregnancy test turned positive. Grace rebuilt everything without him, through pain, nausea, overdue bills, and 2 tiny heartbeats that became her whole world. She raised them alone, loved them fiercely, never spoke his name again, until now. Across the resort, Richard sat in silence on his private balcony, hands trembling. He remembered the last night he saw her. How he'd almost told her the truth. How terrified he was of how fast he was falling. How hard it was to let go of the life he thought he wanted. But he didn't. He left instead. And now he had seen 2 little boys who looked like him. He had lost 7 years. The first steps, the first words, their first everything. Tears burned behind his eyes. How do you come back from that? The next morning, Grace packed their bags. The gossip had already begun. Some staff had seen Richard enter her villa. Photos had surfaced. Online whispers spun stories faster than she could contain them. She had to leave. But just as they reached the lobby, Liam collapsed in her arms. His skin was burning with fever. "Mommy, I feel dizzy." He fainted. Panic exploded. And just then, out of nowhere, Richard ran toward her. "What's happening?" Grace screamed for help, trembling as she clutched her unconscious son. Without hesitation, Richard scooped up Liam, holding him close to his chest. "I'm taking him to the medical wing now." They ran together. And in that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the past, not the pain, not the years. Just one sick little boy and two broken hearts racing to protect him. Do you believe people can change after 7 years of silence? Drop a yes or no in the comments. The hallway outside the resort's clinic was cold, but Richard barely felt it. He sat with his hands clenched between his knees, staring at the closed door where doctors worked to bring down Liam's fever. The boy had barely stirred during the rush in, his skin hot and clammy, lips pale. Grace hadn't let go of his hand for a second, and Richard hadn't let go of the moment he saw his son collapse. Son. The word hit him again like a punch to the chest. Was it real? Could this really be his child? His children? A nurse passed by and gave him a gentle look. He's stable, she said softly. It looks like heat exhaustion, maybe worsened by stress. He's getting fluids and cooling treatment. You can go in soon. He nodded but couldn't speak. His throat felt like it was filled with concrete. Inside the clinic room, Grace sat by Liam's side. Her hands trembled as she wiped sweat from his brow. Her other son, Ethan, had stayed in the waiting area with a kind resort staff member asking questions she didn't know how to answer. How do you explain to a child why his mother is shaking and the man he met yesterday is acting like his heart's breaking? She didn't even know how to explain it to herself. After what felt like hours, Richard stepped into the room. Liam was sleeping peacefully now, color returning to his cheeks. Grace didn't look up. You saved him, she said without emotion. Thank you. I didn't save him, Richard replied quietly. I just ran with him. You're the one who's been saving them every day for the past 7 years. That silence again. It was louder than yelling. He took a breath. Grace, please, just talk to me. She finally looked at him. Her eyes were rimmed with red but full of fire. Talk to you. Now, after 7 years of silence. I know I don't deserve a single word, he said, but I need to say mine. Please. She exhaled slowly, looking at Liam's tiny fingers curled in sleep. Say it then. He swallowed hard. I left because I was a coward. I thought if I disappeared cleanly, it would hurt less for both of us. I convinced myself that you'd move on, and that I wasn't enough. Not for you, not to be a father. I buried myself in work, in deals and flights and boardrooms. Anything to drown out the guilt. But when I saw him, when I saw them, I knew exactly what I'd done. And what I'd missed. She didn't reply. Just sat there, tears silently streaking down her face. I don't expect you to forgive me, he added. But I need to try to fix it. Whatever that means. However long it takes. Grace wiped her face and stood. They're not your redemption project, Richard. They're real people. They cried for a father they didn't have. They asked me if I ever did something wrong to make him leave. Richard's face crumpled. Oh God. And I told them, she continued, that some people disappear because they're too weak to stay. And maybe I wasn't wrong. He closed his eyes, feeling each word like a blade. Can I see Ethan? Can I talk to him? She didn't answer. Instead, she turned away, murmuring, Get some rest. We're leaving tomorrow. The words echoed in his chest. Leaving again. The next morning, Richard stood by the resort fountain, watching families stroll by. He didn't see the water. He didn't hear the laughter. All he saw were the two boys, his boys, walking away from him forever. But fate wasn't done just yet. A voice broke his trance. Sir, are you the man from Villa 7? He turned. A young woman in a staff uniform handed him her phone, eyes wide. This picture is going viral. Everyone's saying you have a secret family. Richard took the phone. There it was. A blurry photo of him carrying Liam in his arms. Grace trailing behind, tear-streaked. The headline read, Richard Walker's Hidden Heir, Shock at Lake Haven Resort. Within hours, the internet swarmed with speculation. Investors emailed. Reporters called. The board demanded answers. By sunset, Richard was forced into a press conference. But this time, he didn't wear his signature three-piece suit. No silk tie. No charm. He wore truth. Facing cameras and whispers, he spoke without notes. 7 years ago, I left someone behind. I ran from something beautiful because I was afraid. Today, I saw the face of that mistake. 2 of them, actually. I may not have proof yet, but my heart doesn't need a DNA test. They're mine, and I will protect them, not because it's expected of me, but because I love them. And I'm ready to earn my place. Reporters shouted questions, but he walked off. In her villa, Grace watched the live feed with trembling hands. Ethan climbed into her lap and asked, Mom, is he really going to stay this time? She didn't have an answer. Not yet. That evening, there was a knock at her door. She opened it, and there he was. Richard. No cameras. No audience. Just a man holding a bag of takeout and an apology in his eyes. I didn't come to ask for anything, he said. Just dinner. Just a chance to sit with my sons and laugh about silly cartoons. That's all. She hesitated, then stepped aside. Don't mess this up, she whispered. He smiled gently. That's the plan. As they sat around the small table, and Ethan told a joke about a spaghetti monster, Richard laughed. Loud, unfiltered, alive. For the first time in years, Grace didn't feel alone at the dinner table. But deep down, fear still tugged at her ribs. Because love didn't heal everything. Time didn't rewind. And tomorrow was a big unknown. Do you believe someone who left can ever truly come back? Let us know. Yes, no, or drop a speech balloon if you're hoping he doesn't mess it up again. The sun filtered gently through the sheer curtains of Grace's home in Asheville, casting a golden warmth over the living room floor. Richard sat cross-legged, helping Ethan glue cardboard wings to a school project. Liam lay on his stomach nearby, scribbling the final touches of a drawing that said, "My family," in big, crooked letters. Grace stood at the edge of the room, coffee in hand, frozen, not by fear, but by disbelief. Somehow, against all odds, this strange, imperfect peace had become their new normal. It hadn't come easily. Not after all the tears, the silences, and the ache of too many years lost. But it had come. Richard had stayed. Every morning he made breakfast, even if he burnt the toast half the time. He walked the boys to school, read them bedtime stories in ridiculous accents, and stood in the background of every parent meeting like he belonged there. He helped with math homework he barely understood. He knelt beside the boys when they skinned their knees. And every night, without fail, he asked Grace the same quiet question with his eyes. Am I doing okay? She never said it out loud. Not yet. But the walls she had once built, with brick and fire, were starting to soften. Because love isn't rebuilt in grand gestures. It's rebuilt in dishes, washed in shoelaces, tied in lunches packed, and left with a note that says, "You got this." Still, there were moments when doubt would creep in. When Grace would wake up in the middle of the night and wonder if this version of Richard was real or just a mirage conjured by hope. And Richard, for all his effort, carried his own fears. That she would never forgive him. That the boys would wake up one day and remember he hadn't been there when it counted most. Then came the letter. It arrived in a plain envelope, no fanfare. Grace had opened it while standing at the mailbox, her fingers trembling. Inside, the DNA test Richard had submitted weeks earlier. She didn't look at the results right away. She just walked into the house, sat at the kitchen table, and waited for him to come home. When he stepped through the door, arms full of groceries and a toy sword one of the boys had begged for, she slid the envelope across the table without a word. He stared at it, then opened it. Silence. Positive. A 99.9% match. No doubts, no debate. The boys were his. Richard didn't cry. He didn't speak. He simply sat down, hands shaking, eyes full of something deeper than joy. Something like relief. And then softly he whispered, "I always knew, but seeing it, having it in writing, it changes everything." Grace leaned forward, watching him closely. "So what now?" He looked up. "Now I earn every single day I missed. Every birthday, every story I wasn't there to read. Every night you cried alone. I can't undo it, but I can be here now and never leave again." She studied him, then said the words she had held in for too long. "You already started." That evening, Richard cooked dinner while Grace set the table. And for the first time since Zurich, they laughed over something simple. The way Liam tried to say, "Bro," and always ended up with Bras Sid. The next morning, Ethan handed Richard a note he had scribbled in green crayon. It said, "Dear Dad, thanks for coming back." Richard excused himself, pretending he needed to grab a sweater, but really just needing a moment to sob behind the bedroom door. Time passed. The family settled into a rhythm. Sunday hikes up the Blue Ridge trails. Friday night movies with popcorn burned on the edges. Trips to the library. Then late-night pillow fights when the boys were supposed to be asleep. The neighbors stopped looking twice. Grace's friends stopped asking if this was temporary. And the school staff started referring to Richard as Mr. Walker without a trace of irony. One night, after the boys were asleep, Richard took Grace by the hand and led her to the porch. The stars were out, the night air cool and clean. In his pocket was a small velvet box, worn at the corners from how many times he'd opened it and then chickened out. "But not tonight. I don't have a big speech," he began. I've said enough words for one lifetime, and I've broken too many of them. So, all I can offer now is the truth. I love you. I never stopped. And if you'll let me, I want to spend the rest of my life making up for the years we lost. He opened the box. Inside, a simple silver ring with a small diamond, not flashy, just honest. Grace stared at it, speechless. I know I don't deserve easy forgiveness. I know I don't get to erase the past. But I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking for a chance to be your home. Her eyes filled with tears. You're such an idiot, she whispered. He blinked, unsure. She smiled. But you're my idiot. And she said, yes. The wedding was small, just family and a few neighbors, held in their backyard under a canopy of string lights. Ethan and Liam wore little matching vests and carried the rings with serious expressions, though they both burst into giggles halfway through the vows. After the ceremony, Richard knelt between them and said, You guys know this doesn't change how much I love you. Right, Liam answered. Does this mean we get cake every day now? No, Grace laughed. It means we're officially a family. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and the boys were asleep, Grace and Richard stood on the porch wrapped in a shared blanket. I never thought I'd be happy again, she murmured. Richard kissed her forehead. That's the thing about second chances. They're never guaranteed, but if you get one, you hold on with both hands. And they did. From that moment on, there was no more looking back. Only forward. So, what do you think? Was Grace right to give Richard a second chance? If this story moved you, comment below. Tell us what country you're watching from. And don't forget to share this video with someone who believes in redemption and real love.